Welcome to Discover Indie Film. I'm your host, Jeff Howard, and today I've got the filmmaking team behind the feature film Turner Risk. That's Michael Dailey and Morgan Lintz. Hey, guys.
Hi. How you doing?
We are talking on FaceTime, so, if you got audio quality complaints, send them to Apple Core. We're going to talk about Turner Risk, and Turner Risk played at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival in 2019, where I have this written down so I can get it right. It took home 4 awards. It got the Audience Award for Best Feature Film, Grand Jury Prize for Best Screenplay, which Michael and Morgan co-wrote together, so we've got them together here. It also got a Grand Jury Prize for Best Performance by a full cast. Well-deserved, because, man, your whole cast is wonderful. And finally, it got the Grand Jury Prize for your lead actor, Carlin James. So it's delightful. I think your film is fantastic. It pretty much, I think I might have said to you at the festival, it kind of just represents exactly what my prejudice of what an indie feature should be. An underrepresented kind of story told in a really honest and really sincere and respectful way. It's really just great. People who want to watch it can go watch it for $3.99 on Amazon Prime Video. And Michael, you said it's on Vudu?
It's on Vudu. It's on iTunes. I don't know. It's on quite a few places. Vimeo and so on. Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So people can run to their computers or their smart TVs and watch Turner Risk. Fortunately, you also chose a unique title. Very smart. There's only one Turner Risk. It always breaks my heart when there's an indie film with a title like, The Bridge. And it's like, okay, geez, there's like 27 The Bridges on IMDb. So how can people find yours?
Would you like to know the story behind that name?
100%, because I think it is such a great name. You want to do the story of the name and then jump into your personal histories?
Sure. The name Turner Risk came from the fact, because we're trying to come up with a name that would be a grabber, right? Hopefully it is. The character is taking a risk at turning his life around. So we were communicating on that fact, and we thought, what about Turner Risk? And that's where it came from.
Right, so he's taking a turn. It's really turn and risk.
Right.
But make it a name.
I have to tell, did I say it at the Sherman Oaks Film Festival? I mean, it is a great character name, and it's just a great title. And, you could have he could have been the next James Bond, like Turner Risk. He goes, he could, obviously there is no sequel.
I really like it because I don't think the movie's technically about Turner. I think it's actually about Carlin's character in the movie. Right. It's about Robbie. So yeah. I like that it is a little bit of a misdirection from what I was actually focused on when I was writing the script.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, well, let me jump back. We've got Michael Dailey and Morgan Lintz, if I said that in the intro, but you guys flip a coin and tell me how each of you got involved in filmmaking and what your inspirations were.
He wants me to go first.
This is Michael, the co-writer and director, is going to go first.
That guy, right. I was 5 years old when my father got me out of bed. I don't know when I went to bed, probably 8 o'clock back then, 5 o'clock, when I was 5, to watch these old movies on television. And at first it was the Universal classic horror films that he was fascinated with growing up. Dracula, Frankenstein. Phantom of the Opera with Claude Rains was one of my favorites. And it was a unique thing that he did only with me, and not with my brother, or my sister was way too young at that time. And as we evolved in these, not every night, but off and on events, I became more and more enraptured with film. Then he mentioned this dude named Alfred Hitchcock, and he said, you have to see a Hitchcock film. And it was around 7, 8 at that time. And there weren't any playing on television. Back then we didn't have cable. We're talking 60s. So eventually there was a showing of a movie, and I'm not sure I'm going to say what it is because it's going to be one of my 4 Qs unless you want me to run into that.
You can. I mean, you can give away. If somebody listens to both podcasts, bravo, they get to know.
Yeah.
They get to, gamble with a friend, say, hey, I bet you he's going to name this one. But feel free.
Okay, well, I've got several, so that'll work. The first Hitchcock film I saw was North by Northwest. And what pulled me into film at that point, and I don't think that was my father's intent. He was just sharing his love of film with me, his love of the story and the image. But I was immersed in the direction. Even at that young age, you can see Hitchcock's moves and his rhetorical choices, really, when it comes to film. And then I began to dabble into film. At the age of 10, I wanted to make movies. So my parents invested in this Kodak Ektachrome camera for Super 8 that looked like a pair of binoculars. And I began to shoot friends and so on. But every shot that I designed, even though I didn't do a very good job of prepping the scene or anything like that, I just kind of jumped into the story and we kind of made it as we went along. We did in-camera editing at that time. Every shot was composed the way I thought Hitchcock would do it. It was usually static. Even if it was moving, it was very solid. So I was thinking like the director. It was like a saturation project. I was totally immersed in the style of it. And then eventually that evolved as I saw more and more films on my own. And that's where my interest in film started as a director. I never put myself in the film, but I always imagined myself acting too. But when I would imagine myself acting, it was to practice a scene that I wanted someone else to perform. So I was trying to envision it, and I can remember doing that when I was really young. So that, I think, just evolved into summer camp. I started working at a summer camp when I was in teen. I was very shy back then. So this high school counselor kind of coerced me into trying out working with kids, which I had absolutely no interest in doing. But when I went into the summer camp, it was a great experience. It was life-changing. And I had the opportunity to create my own activity, and one of them was filmmaking. And I was the movie maker of this particular camp. And we made several films. Some of them were silly. The kids would make them up, and then I would film them. So we still had that touch of Hitchcock in just about everything we did, even though they weren't Hitchcockian stories. We made them about killer waffles attacking the camp and so on. There was one about a tornado that won an award up in Michigan when I sent it up. That one was my first foray into cutting with splicer and tape, which is a god-awful experience compared to the more digital editing that we do now, which is fantastic. So I just evolved through that experience. And then teaching in the classroom, I wanted to continue film, so I offered film elective. I became a teacher. I didn't go the film route. Back then, film schools weren't as plentiful, so the choices were a lot lower. And then I just evolved on my own to where I am now through that experience. I think I learned more teaching kids how to make films, which took up a lot of my time. Teaching is consuming. But eventually, thanks to the recession in 2008, another one of those backwards compliments to something horrible, I was put out of a job like a lot of other teachers, and I had time to make movies. And that's how we got more or less to where we are now.
Right. So the financial crisis crushed city and county budgets, and schools were the victim?
Yes.
That's funny. That's
older teachers like me, because we cost so much. So it ended up school districts began to hire younger teachers. And that's why a lot of them, I think their median age is in the 30s now.
Wow. Yeah, that was an element. Of course, teachers didn't get as much press as all the Wall Street activity.
That's true.
and layoffs. Yeah, I had no idea that public education got hit so hard by that. But obviously, every recession, public budgets get nailed. So that led you into film, and was it, or you have been teaching all along and always interested in film, but was it a huge wake up to shift into the completely digital world? Because all of a sudden there's DSLRs and iMovie?
No, because I've always been a guy who went with the technology. So whatever the technology is, I moved with it. First of all, I never embraced VHS. I thought it looked like crap. And migrated more to high 8, which used to be a smaller tape format when I eventually went to 8. I was never satisfied with the color. The editing back then, I remember I had to edit with 2 cameras connected to each other and turning one on and one off and recording. And you get this little blip in between the shots. So to me, that wasn't much different than having a little tape jump when you spliced with tape or glue. And then around, I think it was 99, Apple came out with that bubble iMac, right? And iMovie. And that changed everything. Because even though iMovie became frustrating to me, it couldn't do what I wanted it to do, but it could do so much. So I eased into that digital foray. And then I think in 01 is when Final Cut Pro came out. And I leaped onto that. I had done some work in Premiere and After Effects before that, but between the two. But I went with Final Cut Pro because I was a Mac guy. Not that I don't respect PCs, just to throw that out there.
Well, and I think if people don't know it, when Avid was the offline digital editing standard. Mm-hmm. It was really the equipment and everything was pretty much unattainable. And Adobe Premiere and iMovie and then Final Cut Pro were the competitors. And at that point, Premiere was the worst product imaginable.
It was. Right.
It was completely ineffective. And the stuff, the prosumer stuff Apple was putting out was actually, world changing. Because all of a sudden, a lot of elements of iMovie just felt like budget Avid.
Right. Right. So that changed everything. And then it became, okay, now what can I do with this? So it wasn't just, I want to make movies. It was, what kind of movies can I make? And it just grew from there. So when I was laid off in 08, I thought, of course, I was looking for work. But I thought, well, there's a perfect opportunity to make a movie. And I just jumped at the opportunity. I felt like it had just fallen into my lap.
And did you do some shorts? Did you do
We actually convened on this. Why are you laughing?
Well, and actually...
he's laughing because I'm going to say this now, but he can get more into it if he wants to. Morgan was one of my students with film. And
what grade level were you teaching?
Middle school.
Middle.
And then high school. He helped me run a filmmaking program I had in the summers that was very successful from 2000 to 2009. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. It was what I meant was it was a lot of fun. And I had a lot of participants. And he was one of the assistants on the program because he was persistent. He wanted to be part of film. He'll explain his part in that later, but when he went off to college, that's when Phenomenon Filmworks, my film studio, was created with a group of 5 other people, all actors, writers. We had like a mix of different filmmaking people. And Morgan said, I want to be a part of that. And I said, no. I said, I'll tell you what, you go to college, and then when you come back, we'll talk about it, because I don't know what's going to happen in college. You're going to be finding yourself. You're going to be going down new paths. You may not be as interested, and I don't want you to get stuck, and I don't want to get stuck with you. And to be honest, while he was in college, he persisted, and we did meet a few times, and he was not always reliable, to be honest. He was fulfilling my anticipation. But when he got out of college, boom, he was there 100%. It was a complete night and day difference. And that's when we really gave birth to a lot of these bigger films like Turner Risk. But he and I were working on projects, and we decided we wanted to ease in the film by making three. We sort of made a trilogy. We made a short film first. The short film was Backpack, and it was a little longer. We made a second film called Five. And Five, Morgan was a lot more involved in than Backpack. Backpack was mostly me, except that he was supervising, kind of looking over the screenplay and so on. But Five we worked on together. And then the third was Turner Risk. So we were trying to move up the scale of different levels of film. Backpack was shot with a camcorder, believe it or not. And that was in 2008, I think. And, we never released it. I think we entered it in 2 festivals and then gave up because it was just too long. It was an off time. It was 48 minutes. But we did get a lot of good comments about it, a lot of support for it. Five, which was our second film, we never released. We're still not sure what we want to do with it, because Five and Turner Risk and Backpack, for that matter, were all born from similar concepts. So our mission was to kind of distribute on our own the first 2 films, and then Turner Risk maybe go for something bigger. And that's why we put everything into Turner Risk. But that's how we got to where we are now. And then, of course, 6 years of digital work and audio work, pulling it all together and making it.
Right. So Turner Risk was shot around 2012.
2012.
And you probably wrote it for a year or so before that. Was it a long writing process?
Yeah, but it was the only one of the 3 films. Well, I would say the first film was pretty straightforward. What I was designing the film to be. The second film, Five, it went through many different incarnations because it's more of a psychological horror film, and we wanted to do in all 3 films something that was different. When we composed Turner Risk, we deliberately took the position of the primary character, mostly Robbie. I mean, Turner's a machine. He goes out and he's on a mission. But Robbie is affected by life. Life is his bully. And he's trying to, well, first, he's a bit wimpy at first. I mean, let's be honest. And then we deliberately do not put him in the driver's seat in the film until the end of the film. He's finally driving in the driver's seat. He's getting his life together because of everything that's happened to him. But in Robbie's case, we made decisions in the film that followed Robbie's decisions because we thought that was more believable. And we could talk more about that if you want when we get to the Turner Risk part. But there's a story to that in how we designed the screenplay, because we did want to do something completely different. And people who see that love our film, and people who see that or don't get it hate our film. I mean,
the originality of the perspective that they just can't.
It doesn't follow the convention, and we didn't want to follow the convention. So we said, okay, what would Robbie do here? Why would Robbie accept this? For example, when Robbie is at one point attacked, the immediate response that we would have done probably is call the police. But Robbie wouldn't. So we didn't let Robbie do that. we said Robbie wouldn't call the police. He'd try to figure it out. He'd try to deal with it. He'd try to deal with Turner. He'd try to do this. He'd try to do that. Some people don't buy that. They say, well, anybody would call the police. I don't agree with that because that's not what Robbie would do. So we kind of
plus I'm sorry to interrupt, but people are demanding that your character act like a movie character and not a real person.
Yes. And that is another thing we were very conscious of. We're going to make, not that we deliberately set out to go against convention, but we wanted our film to be as real as possible. And to be real, we have to step into the character's mindset and say, okay, what would this guy do? Not what does the audience want to see all the time. We had to consider that storyline, and that's where we went.
For sure. All right, well, as long as we're talking about the writing of it, should we jump into Morgan's story?
Go.
Sure. Okay. Kind of a similar story in a way. I guess I started watching movies before I could remember. My dad tells this story of me being a really great baby and then a terrible human after that. So when I was a baby, I guess I was really quiet. I never cried. So he decided he can go do whatever he wants to do and just take me with him. So he loved watching movies. So he would take me to the theater, and I would sit there quietly through the whole movie with the booming bass, loud sound effects, music, everything. And I guess I'd just sit there quietly and just stare. And I don't even know if I could see the screen. But the first big movie I went to, according to my dad, is Jurassic Park in 1993. And still one of my favorite movies. Don't know if it has anything to do with a repressed memory I don't remember, or if I just love it. And after that, I started getting more into film as I got older. My dad kept showing me movie after movie. I'm talking almost every night. It was a movie for 2 hours. It was like a ritual almost. And as I started to kind of see the cracks, it made me more interested in it. I started to see like, this is being formed by people and by a crew, and like there's a lot of stuff going on here. It's not just what I see in front of me. And as I started to notice that, I got more and more invested in it. And I guess after that, I started filming. So I got a mini DV Canon, and I just started filming myself. I didn't have anybody with me. I was an only child, so I was sitting by myself in my house. Didn't want to edit. That was too much work for me. So I decided just to set the camera, turn it on, and just walk into frame, do something, and then walk out of frame. So I just cut all of these clips together, and it would make probably the worst thing you've ever seen. I know it's one of the worst things I've ever seen. So that was my start. And then from there, obviously I took it more seriously after that. I went to college, got a minor in film and television at University of Arizona. I created a short film while I was there that was screened at the Loft in Tucson, and it won a couple of awards. That kind of boosted my confidence a little bit that I was actually doing something that maybe I'm good at, or I have some kind of knack for. And at the same time, obviously, as I was growing up, as he explained, we were doing the summer program together. And I was an assistant in that, and I was creating short films with the younger kids that were in the program. Oftentimes I would kind of be the director of those short films, just kind of helping them through the process, or I would want to create something that I just thought was interesting. So all that experimentation really led to becoming very serious in Phenomenon Filmworks with Mike. I would say probably college time is when I really got invested, even though he says I was the most flaky during that time. That's where I really felt invested, because I was like, I think I want to follow this after college. This is something that I truly care about. When I came back, that's when I really threw myself into it. But throughout college, and even a little bit before I went to college, that's when the backpack was going on, and then 5 was going on. And the beginning of the filming of Turner Risk was when I was just exiting college, or getting close to the exit of college. So I wasn't actually part of the production as much, but I was behind the scenes on pretty much everything. So that's my involvement in that. I think if I could progressively show an audience how our movies have gotten better, I hope, or how we've changed and adapted, which I think is the most important thing for an independent filmmaker, is looking at the titles. We started with The Backpack, which is the most generic title I've ever heard, and was the title of like 1,000 other movies in existence.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interject. When we first chose that title, there was no other film that was called The Backpack. This is true. Or five. And then, literally a year later, there's 100 of them. It's like, what?
He doesn't know how to use the internet as well as I do.
No,
there were hundreds.
I was alive when it was invented. But no, I'm just saying, we're not arguing. I'm sorry I interrupted.
This is better for podcasts. We need this.
Yeah, it's fine. And actually, I'm going to backtrack briefly just to point out, I guess you're probably both completely aware of this, but your film-loving fathers, just pure film fans, film lovers, both got the gift of a kid who appreciated film too and just jumped on it. It's just like when a music lover, their kid goes, hey, the Beatles sound good, and all of a sudden you can play them 20 records and stuff. Both your dads jumped on the chance to share film with you, and then you both really got interested in the art behind it. Yeah. So it's very similar stories.
Very similar.
I know, it's
the basis
weird.
Of it, yeah.
It really is.
The origin stories. Except yours was a little bit before mine.
Thanks. That's very nice.
Well, look, I've tried to do the same thing with my stepdaughter. I showed her good film after good film. I'm trying to get it, and she just loves horror now. So I'm like, okay, let's watch The Exorcist this weekend because you've seen 3 possession movies. I want you to see the movie that started the whole damn possession movie thing. And I don't know. I actually think it's going to fail on me, but I tried.
It's a hard thing for me at my age because I'm 30 now and I live in a millennial circle and a relatively young millennial circle. And because of that, old film is often forgotten in that circle. They don't really care for anything before 1990, basically. 1990 and above is pretty much anything they'll watch, and anything before that kind of falls to the wayside. Minus the film students that I was in college with, obviously. But I'm just talking in general. That's my social circle. So for me, I grew up on old films. That's what my dad showed me. He didn't show me as many contemporary films as he did, 70s, even 60s, 50s. And now I find myself watching more 2000s or 2010s, 2020s. More than I do older films. Which is interesting because I feel like I want to go back at some point, right? I want to go back to the basics of okay, this is where it all started. But I do think that my relationship and this partnership in this company with Mike has also brought me back to that core that I remember from my childhood more than maybe I would have if I just got involved in the social circle that I'm in.
For sure. And I mean, honestly, when it comes to watching film, I'm trying to make up for the fact that I didn't go to the movies now for the last 15 years. Because all I saw was kids' movies. No. Like when you're done. Actually, Morgan is about to be a dad. And so 2-3 years, you'll still get to watch what you want. But when they hit 3 or 4, the TV belongs to them. And it's the same film over and over and over. And thank God, actually, the Pixar stuff, there's a lot of great material for kids. Yeah. But yeah, I have this huge gap that's probably your prime time. And people are like, yeah, didn't you ever see some, Scott Pilgrim? I'm like, no, I got to go watch Scott Pilgrim. I'm like, wow, it is really good. But anyway, that's my story. So I want to jump back to you two. So, Morgan, you were still in college when you guys wrote Turner Risk.
Yes.
Yep.
Passing the script through email mostly, just back and forth. And,
just emailing a final draft file back and forth?
When we could, and I think that was before FaceTime even existed, maybe. I don't know.
You might have been able to use Skype, maybe, but...
Something like that. I don't really remember, but I do remember the emails. It was a lot of email back and forth. And every time he had a question about something that he was writing, he'd send it to me. I'd look it over, and vice versa. If there's something he thought, oh, maybe you have a better perspective on this. I mean, we were writing about more my age group than his age group at that time, a millennial age group. So there was times where he would say like, hey, maybe you have a perspective here that I'm just not in tune with that might help the scene. And I think that's kind of what you see in Turner Risk is this balance between that millennial mindset, which comes mostly from me, and then the classical mindset of Mike. And he's got like all the filmmaking techniques down pat. And I think everybody that watches Turner Risk, one of the things they say is this is beautifully shot. And that's all Mike. That's not me. I'm just the writer. I'm in the background.
Yeah, but to trumpet both of you on the writing side, and I imagine Mike had a lot of insight into that age group from teaching.
Right.
But I think I told you, like, when first time I saw the film, I was sure that Michael, Dailey, and Morgan Lintz were like young Asian dudes, like maybe with a white dad or something to have that last name. But I mean, it completely felt so genuine that I assumed that the people in the film were your peers.
But that's my immaturity showing.
It's great to take advantage of immaturity when you can.
We're really, I think both of us, even though Mike shoehorned it, I think we're both really proud of the casting in the movie because it didn't look at race or culture or female or male or any of that stuff. We just picked who we thought was going to portray the role the best. And it happened that we got a predominantly Asian cast, and that was fine. Didn't matter. Like,
I think they're very needy of roles at that time.
Yeah.
And
still are.
They were the best of what I saw. And they were the most reliable throughout. Not that everyone else wasn't as well. But it's nice that we had a diverse cast.
Yeah, I like it.
It's very nice. And I'll add, I think, at the Q&A at the festival, where I think your whole cast was pretty much present. And I think they shared that you gave them a lot of freedom on set to make the performance true to their image of the character, right? If they said, I really think, right? Didn't they have a certain amount of freedom?
The process that I used, well, first of all, I found you work with actors, if I can jump in here, you work with actors as a director who, at least this is my experience, I have that one in the group that wants to do everything kind of ad lib and be spontaneous. And I want to feed that energy. But that throws off everyone else who doesn't want to follow through. They want to learn their lines. They want to learn how to deliver their lines. They feel their lines are part of that character they're creating. So the majority of the cast this time in Turner Risk wanted to follow the script. They were pretty adamant about that. If they had an idea that was different, I was completely open to it as long as it didn't throw the story off. Because if you're writing the lines correctly, you want it to tell the story. You're telling the story through the character's actions and words. What the process that I used in order to feel that the performances were more genuine and to put more of the control in their hands because I trust them intrinsically was we would kind of talk through the scene and the blocking. Then I would leave the scene and let the actors work it out together. And after they were ready, which sometimes took 5 to 20 minutes, I'd come back in and watch as if I was seeing the whole scene play out in real time and I wasn't there. And if it looked real to me, we were good to go. And I felt that way of letting the actors kind of control the premise, control their own interactions, let them do their thing and do it the way they felt, because they're the ones who are stepping into the character. I'm just showing them I'm giving them direction, and that's it. And every time I did that, it worked perfectly.
Yeah, and their performance, and that's probably why it won Best Performance by an entire cast, and why it seemed so genuine, because you created a framework where even though they were loyal to the script, they were workshopping out their own truths. Mm-hmm. And making it genuine and emotionally true. So when it's emotionally true, then audience members who get it are, as a film viewer, as a fan of it, it's always annoying when you see characters and they just don't seem real and they don't seem human and sincere, and they're acting like, character cutout, A7, the chippy friend who always throws in an insult. Like, it's just, there's none of that in your film. I don't know how long the cast is. I actually have the cast list in front of my face, but there's 10 to 12 recognizable speaking parts, and every one of them looks like a real kid. Like, if this had been shot, like a film like Kids, where a director just took a bunch of younger humans and shot them doing their own thing,
Larry Clark.
Yeah, Larry Clark. I would almost believe it was done that way, just because the performances are that good and the material is that good.
Well, thanks. Mean Creek is another film like that too. I don't know if you've seen that. That's an indie film also.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, you might check it out
for sure. Well, so it sounds like the writing process went pretty well, and then you cast and shot the sucker. And did all your experience and a lot went into leading up to this. Was it just a really nice, smooth filming experience?
I thought you're making a face. I thought it was a lot of fun. Was it perfect? No, nothing's perfect, right? The thing that I really admired how much the actors put into everything they did. We had a lot of fun because they all had a great sense of humor. They were dealing with difficult scenes. By the way, actors love dying. It's like I almost felt that there was a competition about who was going to die the best in the film, not to give anything away. And I tried to keep it as real as possible. So, there's footage that no one will probably ever see because it looks so darn scary and real that I couldn't show it by any means. But that's how much they were dedicated. But I will throw this out, and I don't want to embarrass anyone. So let's just say a particular actor, for example, had a lot of trouble with the car he was driving. I'm going to say car, even though it may not have been a car. Hint, hint. And it was a manual transmission, and he had no idea how to drive manual. So the poor guy, I had to teach him. And there were several times when there were a lot of missed shots. And one time one time, it was right after the murder scene, in fact, he almost went over a cliff because he couldn't get it to shift reverse, because you got to kind of pop the clutch down or the gear shift down and over. So that was kind of, we were like, oh, no. I would say that first murder scene was one of the hardest things to film because we ended up with a cracked windshield. Just the awkwardness of filming it the way we did. And then, of course, the car almost going over the cliff. That was a real interesting day. But still,
that is a death. I'll jump in as a fan and a viewer. That death is convincing. And the performance is stellar. And in our crowded theater in Sherman Oaks, I know for a fact, I remember that death, hushed the crowd felt it. I bet I said this at the Q&A that Hollywood sensationalizes murder, right, and death, and in your film, every death is felt as a loss.
That's probably one of the greatest things we could have heard about the film because that's what we were after, and we really appreciate hearing that again because we wanted that feeling. How many times do you see a movie and somebody dies and they just say, okay, let's go? It's too much.
It is, unless it's dark comedy, it's pretty unforgivable. Dark comedy, I guess, ethically shaky, but in a wonderful way.
I love dark comedy.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, it's wonderful when death is funny.
Yeah.
Because I think we need that as human beings. We need to be able to laugh at the scariest thing on the planet. And at the same time, yes, it's almost unforgivable, the casualness with which we accept, violence. But anyway, so I love hearing that the cast was, I wonder if they were actually like watching each other perform passing away and like saying, okay, I'm going to like steal a little bit and try to up it. Cause I love the idea that they had sort of a competition of who could have the best on-screen death.
I would say that was kind of amusing. Yeah. But the interesting thing is that nobody really saw anyone else's death. I mean, we didn't show any rushes to the actors. We were cutting a little bit as we went, but most of the cutting happened after, which, by the way, for anyone making film is a horrible mistake. It's the first time I did that, but I was so engrossed in just trying to get the film on, intact, that we just had these rush of looking over shots, making sure they were focused, and they were all good. But I didn't start cutting until after the film was wrapping up, and that was part of the prolonged, post-production experience. But they had a pretty good idea of what others had done because we had a workshop before to talk about the murder scenes and how we were going to manage them. And interestingly, originally, we went through methods of killing. And we were making this at the height of all of the school shootings and mass shootings that had kind of, crept up to 2012. So we were clearly trying to make a statement about that. But we decided not to do a gun at the last minute. Of course, a gun appears later in the film, but we didn't want to get into the gunplay because we just felt we didn't want to sensationalize what was going on in the news, but we wanted to make a comment about the type of mind that might produce that type of damage. And we were actually glad that we didn't because Sandy Hook happened, I think, the year after while we were cutting. And I remember we both said, thank God we didn't have the gun all the way through that, because I don't know that we could have ever have advanced on the project after that experience. So just throw that out there.
For sure. And gun deaths they're so common in cinema, right? And they're so impersonal that I think that's another thing you did, right? Is you went with very personal situations.
Very Hitchcock.
Right. Yeah. Hitchcock never had people 15 feet apart saying, look, it's always, a standoff with guns is always entertaining, but yeah, Hitchcock, you always felt it.
Yeah.
There's something particularly poppy at the end too, when the gun is introduced into it. If we had the gun through the whole thing, that I don't think that last scene would have felt the same way with the gun. The personal nature of the murders up to that, and then just kind of the senseless killing in that bathroom scene. I guess we're doing spoilers because you've already said a lot. So
Spoiler alert.
Well, it's been out for almost 2 years, so I think we're free to spoil. It's still, I guarantee everyone, it's worth seeing the film, even if you know that people are going to die.
People are going to die
in a very personal way. I'll add that the other brilliant storytelling element you have there is fighting back, fighting for your life. You can't really fight for your life if you're an unarmed person and someone's pointing a gun at you. I mean, beyond Steven Seagal easily pulling a gun out of someone's hand, there's really nowhere to go with that. Whereas, I don't know, we'll just say choking, stabbing, pushing off a ledge, whatever it is, like a human being has an opportunity to make the audience think they've got a chance to get away.
Oh, that's exactly our approach.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's like bullying, right? So he felt oppressed throughout the entire time. He never fought back. Now he's saying, well, you fight back in this situation and see how it goes. Mm-hmm. It is very personal. And I think that's what kind of makes this divisive. Like we were saying, some people really connect with it and understand it. Other people find it just too much, and we totally get that. Like, I think that's part of the film. It is a lot.
And it's not something that we want to recreate. You know, our future projects have nothing to do with murders. To say. At least not at this point.
It's probably important
we want to make different kinds of movies, so we've got a slate of films that we want to do, and we don't want to make the same film over and over again. So we're still experimenting too with concepts, but we want to keep everything we do real, no matter what.
Well, and if you're making things at the independent level where you have complete control, there's no reason to make commercial bullshit that that would survive a focus group on a studio lot, because someone else is doing that for us, so you don't have to.
We have conversations about the fact that films today just seem so repetitive. As a matter of fact, I think music is repetitive. I hear a really good tune, but then I can hear another tune and think, that kind of reminds me of that other tune. It's kind of the same thing with film. What was the film, Promising Young Woman? Is that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was last year.
No, that one was
film festivals during the time we were doing Sherman Oaks.
That one we thought was a lot different.
Yeah, that one was good. I liked it more than he did, but I felt that it captured something that I hadn't really seen done in the way that it was done in that film. And it has a quite shocking little twist in it that kind of relates to what we were doing.
Yeah,
it's still on my watch list. I haven't been able to get. I am fortunate to have a partner, and she watches everything with me. Yeah. And Promising a Woman, she keeps pushing down the list because she's like, that's going to depress me too much as a woman. Like, she keeps putting it off. But I can say, we shouldn't talk about other films too much. But yeah, that was a great year because there was that film, and I thought Sound of Metal was something I'd never seen before. Mm-hmm. It was nice to see movies, some originality popping up, but yeah. But yeah, I know what you mean about music. I went to a concert, and I guess I won't name the band because a lot of people love this band. And I went to a big outdoor concert once COVID was sort of under control. And I kept going, did they play this song already? Because every song sounds from the same formula. So I'm like, oh yeah, that's that famous song of theirs. Oh wait, no, this is that famous song I've heard. No, wait, this is like every song. 8 times I thought it was Green Day. So anyway.
As far as movies,
I was going to say, was it Green Day?
Were you?
Go ahead.
As far as movies are concerned, I think there is a budget level, especially in like smaller Hollywood films, where they cut corners on music a lot of the time, maybe for budget reasons, and they use temp music. So it's literally music that was used in a different film that they repurpose and change just a little bit to make it into this new film. So you're literally hearing the same music in a lot of movies these days.
I would like to make a comment about our composer, if you don't mind.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so
good idea.
We're both members of Stage 32. And I don't do a lot of activity online with social media. I need to do more. We do beef it up when we have a project to promote, but we're both too busy to deal with social media, and we have to be careful anyway because we both teach as well. And we come across Dara Taylor because I just went on and said, we're looking for a composer, and then boom, there she is. And she's very interested. We didn't know who Dara Taylor was, but to make a long story short, she's been very involved in, including The Boys, which you mentioned earlier. She's been very involved in a lot of projects with composing. And we thought, how in the world did we get her? So she watched the film. She loved it. She wanted to compose it. We had a temp score down. And she came up with her own spin of that. And, I don't hear enough maybe about the people listen to the music. They always say, oh, that's really nice. What is that? But we actually paid for an orchestra. So we had some orchestration because obviously she had choices. But she did a remarkable job, and she was fantastic to work with. So I just want to throw her name out there.
Shout out to Bow Tie Orchestra as well.
A Bow Tie Orchestra in Russia.
In Russia. They're amazing.
Really? So so she composed music for you, and then you were able to send sheet music to Russia through the internet.
She did that.
Oh, she did that, but that's how you get a discount orchestra, as you go to an impoverished country where there's great classical musicians.
Yeah, they Bow Tie Orchestra apparently does this for film, and we were able to listen to all the sets. And to be honest with you, because they broadcast them live when they were recording, and she was here she was there in L.A., and I don't know what city in Russia. Maybe it was Moscow. I think it was Moscow. At any rate, she was going back and forth with them, so we could hear her voice. But we could make heads or tails out of what we were listening to because there were little snippets that had to be put together later.
But it was great.
That was amazing.
It was an incredible experience. She was
so wonderful. She's just a great. Like, you met her at the film festival, but she's really great lady.
She was directly talking to them as they were recording the music too. They were Skyping or FaceTiming or something. Because she was saying, like, oh, we could do this on that part.
Yeah, then they
would do it over again. I mean, it was so cool to watch the whole thing come together.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Absolutely, and you can never underestimate the value of scoring.
Oh, yeah.
No, as a matter of fact, throw out to Hitchcock again. Sorry, and others. I'll add others. Movies without musical scores work too, like Rear Window, which the only musical score is what you hear from its window from another apartment. The Birds, unless you consider bird sounds music. China Syndrome, I don't think has an authentic music soundtrack. So these movies... No
Country for Old Men, more contemporary.
Well, that's got music, though. I'm talking about movies that have no technical musical score written for them. I think those are amazing. But I think that what really pulled me into music was particularly Titanic. Because whether you love or hate Titanic as a movie, and I don't understand the hate of that movie, but nonetheless, it's not my favorite, but I really admire it.
It's pretty overrated.
It's on its overrated list. Okay, so I think it was a perfect marriage of music and story. I use that film as a guide in music. I do, in that whole idea. Just to throw that out there. And I know we're naming a lot of movies. I hope that's all right.
We have no hard and fast rules. That's the joy of podcasting. There's no, it goes right out to the world, and there's no corporate filter we got to fight through.
Fantastic.
I'll add that, yes, I love when a film is beautifully scored. I think, I think Christopher Nolan does always a great job with score.
Yeah, he did.
But, that's why I have a hard time most Spielberg films when the score overwhelms. I'm like, oh, man, just could you back off the score a little and let me feel what I feel without telling me what to feel? But there, I just joined you in over-mentioning other films by bitching about Spielberg's scores. So, or John Williams, I guess. Lord knows every time I see everyone going to the Hollywood Bowl to celebrate John Williams, I'm like, yeah, celebrate overdoing it to death. But anyway, that's my opinion.
Yep.
Well, I would say, okay,
What's up?
One of my favorite films, but you'll hear about this later. I think it's perfectly scored. You might say it's overscored. We can talk about that later. But let's take Empire of the Sun, just to throw this out there, because I love that film. And I get that one of its primary criticisms is the score is way overblown. But I think that what we're looking at in that film is the way the boy sees the world on a huge scale. That he's this little figure that he's imagined he's some kind of hero in the middle of this giant scope of the world. And I felt the music was written with that in mind. Now, I'm not in John Williams' mind, but I think the score is exactly what you just said, unless you look at it from that perspective. So I go back and forth on that.
I would have to rewatch it to see if that one is victim to it. But
I'm pretty sure you'll think it is.
I might.
But it is bombastic.
Yeah.
But the question is, was it intentional was it intentionally written that way, or did it just happen?
But I mean, it works for me in Jaws. I just think it just went too far for me sometimes. And actually, it's funny.
I agree.
And Ready Player One, I actually loved that film. And then, like, for no reason at all, like, we get some kind of score that doesn't even fit with the film. And I'm like, come on, you had contemporary music with a contemporary digital film. Like,
yeah.
Now you want me to feel that they're falling in love. Guess what? I actually got that without. But anyway.
Useful score?
I should not complain about Spielberg for 10 minutes during your interview. So, and you actually, I think you started mentioning, actually you did when we were talking about murder and death and all this, and that you don't have murders in your future stuff. So is there anything you want to say about your future stuff right now while we're recording this for posterity?
Well, that's tricky. Yeah, we were talking about how much can we reveal about our future stuff, because you don't want to throw things out there that might inspire others to come up with something similar. So,
going away from murder.
Going away from murder.
Into a more wholesome.
Yeah, this is hard. We did come up with a horror idea that we like a lot. We actually were preparing it for a contest that Imagine Films has with its programming with Netflix, but we never finished it in time. We are just too busy, but we still like the concept. It was sort of a ghost story, but different. The question being that, no, I can't say it. Sorry. It's okay, because that's the giveaway. Let's just say
no need to. You don't have to do that. But it's good to know you're so productive. By the way, so you both still teach. You both are teaching. So
yeah,
I notice as a fan of indie film, it's always wonderful when people have something stable in life for food and housing, so that film can remain the art, and that each film you make, it's not like a massive pressure to be like, to make something that's not important to you because you think the marketplace wants it.
Right.
Oh, we have discussions on that all the time, and we don't want to go there.
Yeah. And honestly, if you could and do it successfully, great. But actually, nobody can. Nobody knows what the marketplace wants. The studios never knew. They were always just throwing, spaghetti against the wall and hoping it stuck.
Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't sell out because nobody's buying. You just don't know. Who knew that a film about an unhoused woman living in a van traveling the country was just going to resonate at a level that got it international recognition? Like, that wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I like that film.
Some really great scripts out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so that's great. And I don't want to cut you off, though. We've gone for about an hour, but is there anything else you want to share before we wrap it up and then do a second podcast where we really dive into discussing? I have a feeling, actually, your 4 questions, I think the 3 of us are going to go long because we're going to discuss all kinds of films at length. The irresistible urge to, it's always fun. I confess that part of this podcast, it was, of course, because the Q&As at the festival, even though Sherman Oaks Film Festival and Film Invasion LA, like, we have long Q&As compared to most festivals, but it's still not enough. I mean, we still have to walk out of the, like, I think we all stayed till midnight for your
We
Q&A.
did. Yeah.
And probably went beyond midnight because the theater's generous to let us go a little later. But, I mean, I bet if we watched Turner Risk at noon in a crowded little theater, I bet there could be a 5-hour discussion at a bar across the street, with the cast and crew and the 2 of you, just about all the things, that we saw It's just fun. It's so much fun to discuss film, right? It's the campfire. It's the Cro-Magnons around a campfire discussing The Hunt. Like this is how human beings share their lives.
I've got one more thing. How about a thank you to you and Sherman Oaks? Because I honestly don't believe we would have gone through with distribution the way we did if we didn't see that in that theater that night with a crowd and then have that Q&A and really feel like it was something that could be appreciated by an audience. Because honestly, we didn't know. When we finished it, we were like, we like it. We know we like it, but we didn't know if it would resonate. We didn't know if people would understand it. And I think that night solidified that we could actually do something with it.
Wow, that's wonderful. I thought you were going to thank us because one of our board members actually got on board and helped you work it out with gravitas. But the experience with the crowd, that is wonderful to hear. That
I don't even think that I knew that Glenn was on your board, but I also want to mention that although yours was our American premiere, we did show in Toronto also earlier in the month, and we weren't able to attend that because Knucklehead here was getting married. So,
kids like cooking.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you're right. You got married, now you're having a baby, so that kind of,
So you put your nuptials ahead of was it a TIFF?
No.
No.
If it was at TIFF, that would have been amazing. No,
you would have said, have a great wedding. One of us has to go.
I'm out.
It was at a smaller festival, but it was a real good experience. It was fantastic, actually. And we tied with a French film called Blondie Maxwell Never Loses. And interestingly, they had the same type of journey we did in getting distributed. Distribution is a heck of a lot of work. So if I can throw out a comment in addition to supporting his thank you to you, you've been fantastic, and Sherman Oaks Film Festival, that is one of the greatest nights of my life. I know it was small scale compared to going to the Oscars, which, by the way, I don't have much of an interest in anymore. Because it just seems,
falsely.
Sorry, Oscars, but that will never get one. Okay, so anyway, you can cut that out. I wanted to say that now you made me forget what I was going to say. Okay, go ahead.
Have you seen the clip of Taika Waititi when he had his short film in the Oscars and it pans over to him and he's sleeping like this in the crowd? It makes me laugh every time.
No, I didn't see that.
It was his first short film. He went to the Oscars and he was just pretending to sleep when they called his name. It's a great clip.
And they have no choice but to keep acknowledging him.
Yep.
I just wanted to throw out there that anyone making a film, when you get to distribution, there are so many things that you have to prepare. And fortunately, we had done a lot of that work ahead of time without even knowing we needed it. But you have deliverables that are an extensive list. And I just want to warn people, when you get into the distribution process, it's very exciting and anxious at the same time. I don't know how many times they would find a flaw when they were scanning through the film that we had to fix and regenerate more and more copies, and then you have to send it to them over the internet, and it takes over a day. And I have
because it's a massive ProRes HQ file
project, right? So again, Gravitas has been fantastic, actually. So no complaints, but I'm just saying it is a lot of work. So what we're going to try to do is detail some of that in the work that we're preparing for our website and for our online channels, and try to give people a better idea of how to prep for that while they're making the film. Particularly if it's a feature, I think short films might be a little different.
Yeah, and what you have experienced that almost nobody knows till they go through it is that the deliverables required for streaming and the modern digital world, it's different for every platform. It drives you crazy. it can double your budget once you think you've made a film and you've got a DCP that you can show at festivals. Of course, our festival doesn't even require a DCP. But no, like, I'll actually talk to Glenn about stuff, and he's like, nah, don't even consider the encoding required for iTunes. Too expensive.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hell of a process. You'd think you could just take a digital cinema project and everyone could use it, but not even close.
No, we just had to produce one body of work that was accepted. And again, some of the flaws are like, how did we miss that? Like a little black on the side of the screen where the picture had shifted, and it was like, how do we miss that? Where you get so into the thing.
Really? There was like a digital, what do they call it? An artifact or something? Like some kind of error?
Yeah. Some glitch that was probably there when we showed it at your festival too, but nobody noticed because you're into the picture and it's very slight. It's over on the side, but it was there, and they would scan it. They find it. So you really want to meticulously scan your work. And then all the paperwork and, the copyright passes and all that, it's a lot of work.
Oh, yeah. See captions.
Oh, that's right.
I was like, what?
Yeah,
I'm not going to sit here and type the captions.
Yeah, we had to hire someone to do the whole screenplay. Well, we could provide the screenplay.
They needed a transcript, and they needed English captions to put on the film. So we were like, we could sit there and literally transcript everything, or we could just hire somebody.
And Morgan was fantastic. He found someone to do that, and the guy was great.
Yeah, he's really great.
I forget what that's called.
Yeah, and if it changes, my experience actually with the Discovery Indie Film TV series working with Amazon was we did our captions. We hired, actually a really good company, Rev.com, I think, did the captions. And then a filmmaker chain did an update to his film, and I was like, as long as you don't screw with the running time. And I think, honestly, half a second changed. Like, it was not even noticeable in the runtime, but somehow. Yeah. And so then all of a sudden Amazon is saying, no, your captions are out of sync.
Yeah.
And I was like, are you kidding? If someone's reading while they're watching the show, they're not going to care that it's half a second later. You always have to, you got to speed read anyway.
But that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's that definite, that minute an issue, and they'll bring it up. And then sometimes they would say, they give you a list. And I say, well, what? And then you look at it, it's like, it was like that.
Yeah.
So it was quite, I think I had to redo it 12 times. Yeah, 12 times.
And it makes you, it definitely.
So, but I know now, and if I can help other people avoid that by telling them what they need to do, that's kind of our mission now, is to try to help other filmmakers do the same.
Yeah. I have a friend who actually Gravitas picked up his film. He made a horror film during COVID. His parents have a bed and breakfast in Pennsylvania, so he was able to create a little bubble and make a little horror film at Mom's bed and breakfast. And anyway, Gravitas picked it up. I haven't seen the guy for 6 weeks because he's trying to get all the deliverables done.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
can't even stop by for a barbecue because the list of things they need is so long.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So.
All right. Well, I think we're ready to do you want to say people who have been the good people who have listened to this whole thing and are fascinated by our nerdy film chat, where should they look up Phenomenon Filmworks and your work?
Well, we have phenomenonfilmworks.com, and we have a little body of a little bit of our student films too, because we work with students trying to get into film schools as well as younger students in film programs. So we teach film as well. Also, of course, we have a channel, Phenomenon Filmworks, on YouTube and Vimeo. Is there anything I'm missing? Those are the three we feed on a regular basis. Facebook, of course. Twitter is pretty inactive at this point. But again, once we start kicking up, because right now we're doing a lot of pre-production work. We did on our own front. I mean, we have projects that are mixed between our own projects that we kind of want to do for fun and experiment a little bit, like as we have. But we also have big projects that we want to present, and we've done some work in getting those prepared and looking at how we have to present those. The Bible, as it's called, that we have to project. Trying to get an agent, that sort of thing. So we're looking into all that once things are ready to go. So that's really been taking our time away from the online stuff. So it's still there, but we'll be feeding it starting in October. So.
Excellent. Okay. Well, Phenomenon Filmworks, and you've got the wonderful thing where it's the website, whether it's YouTube, Vimeo, Instagram, Twitter, you've got your name is your handle, which is, right. I always feel bad for people who are forced to, if it's different things in different places, boy, talk about entropy.
We also have a link tree where you can find all the links for everything.
Oh, excellent. And that's at phenomenonfilmworks.com. Cool. All right. Well, now I'm going to name all the .coms and stuff for the festivals to get us completed. I did actually mention even though we were talking about Turner Risk, which people should go watch on many, many platforms, just search for Turner Risk unique title. So when you type Turner Risk, whether it's Prime Video or Vimeo or Vudu or who knows, it's hard to name all the platforms nowadays, but look up Turner Risk and watch it. And you know what? When you watch it, give it the maximum number of stars, give it a good review, be supportive of indie film. This film is a purely independent film, so the world should be loving and supportive of it. And now I'll segue into, and while you're giving Turner Risk 5 stars, give this podcast 5 stars. I think the saying is subscribe, review, share. I don't know. It's something. Someone said something really cool like subscribe and blah blah. But give this podcast 5 stars. I joke about the fact that there's been like 100 filmmakers on here and we have like 12 5-star reviews. So anyway, you'd think at least the people on the podcast would give it 5. But anyhow, give it 5 stars wherever you are. And if you want to learn more about this podcast, and there is a TV series as an anthology of short films that is a companion to it, you can learn about that at discoverindiefilm.com. And then on all the social media, it's at DIFwins. And so that works. And then we talked about the Sherman Oaks Film Festival a lot. If that happens every November, in fact, we're back in the theaters. We had 1 year last year where it was a completely virtual festival, which was a weird thing for me as someone who loves the theater. But we are back in the theater in November, and if you want to learn about it, it's ShermanOaksFF.com, and it's at ShermanOaksFF on social media. It's actually ShermanOaksFilmFestival.com, but we bought Sherman Oaks FF and redirected it, because how many typos are you going to get people trying to type Sherman Oaks Film Festival? And that festival has a sister festival that's every June. So we have a June and a November, and the June festival is Film Invasion Los Angeles. And you can learn more about that if you go to filminvasionla.com. And on social media, it's at filminvasionla. And I have now gotten the spiel out of the way. I was warned by another filmmaker just last night that I should do the spiel earlier so that there's something after the spiel, because otherwise everyone just knows, okay, when Jeff starts naming websites, stop listening. But no one will know there's this nice little cracker at the end where I think so. Thank you, Morgan and Michael.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure, and we're actually going to stop recording, and then we're going to start recording right again to have these two gentlemen do their 4 questions. Which little preview is I think there will be some Hitchcock on it, but it's favorite films, and underrated, overrated, and something less to seek out. So that's always a fun podcast to listen to because it gives you really cool movie referrals. All right. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone who listened.